Good morning, everybody. And I just want to welcome my next guest. He needs no introduction, Arthur Goldstuck. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dylan. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so Arthur, just in case somebody has been living under a rock, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to those who perhaps haven't heard of you?
Right now, I suppose the most important thing is that I've just written my 20th book, which is The Hitchhiker's Guide to AI. And right now, of course, artificial intelligence is the topic on everyone's lips. So I've been very fortunate that I've been able to cover the emergence and rise of AI in the business world for almost a decade now. And because I am also a journalist, I get invited to international events, to implementations of technology and the like. And they've given me what I call in the book a front row seat to the AI revolution as it's occurred in recent years. I come from a very small town where I grew up with a passion for science fiction because it was an escape for me. And the result of that is that I always dreamed of a future in which the science fiction possibilities became a reality. And I feel that's the world we're in right now. And in between, I started a small high-tech market research company called Worldwide Works, and I published an online magazine called Gadget at gadget.co.za. And those are my passions, and conducting market research, understanding where the market is going, but then also covering what is happening in that tech environment and pulling all of those together into a cohesive picture of the future, you could say, is really what occupies much of my time. And my most common activities are probably writing about tech and then speaking about tech at corporate events, at conferences, and the like, because that's how I'm really able to pull everything together that I do and share it with an audience and interact with that audience to understand their response and their visions of the future.
Thank you. Yes. And so how is the book? So how are the book sales going?
It's been fantastic. The first print run was sold out in 3 months, and it's just gone into a reprint.
Oh, wow. So that's amazing. So I have a signed first edition.
Fantastic. It was so great to see you at the launch.
Yes, it was fantastic. Yeah, I loved the book. I found it you really simplified a very deep, broad, very three-dimensional topic. You simplified it and you presented it in a very, like you dumbed it down for the layperson, which I really enjoyed. And what really struck me is you've met the literal who's who of who in the zoo, from South Africa all the way across the world. Even, where were you? Kazakhstan for Kaspersky. Was that in Kazakhstan? I mean,
it was in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, you've literally traveled the globe and you've met everyone. That's and you've interviewed them as well. I mean, that's amazing.
I've been enormously privileged to have access to these kinds of people. And I make a point of it when I attend these events to at least get a comment on the future, and especially on AI, from the horse's mouth. So even if it's just where they have a briefing by the CEO of the organization to the media, I make sure that I'm in a position where I can actually ask them a question and video that answer. So I've got this wealth of material of CEOs answering my questions, which I'm still sifting through to try and sort into a new presentation as we speak. But it's in a way exhilarating to be at that coalface of innovation.
Well, it's an amazing topic. And I think everybody just suddenly felt the breakthrough to the new level November last year. At least that was when I became aware of it, that we'd really, with this generative AI, that we'd really clicked onto another level, just literally, So, I mean, in your book, you cover the impact on the different industries and for different layers of people. You've covered, for CEOs, for marketers, for the different industries and that. But I think the main fear that initially hit was, we're all going to lose our jobs. And that's across every industry. I mean, we're talking lawyers, engineers, development, everybody. We're all doomed and technology is going to rule the world. So I don't know if you want to just maybe address the elephant in the room before we do anything else.
Here's the bad news. You are all doomed. You are all going to lose your jobs if you don't embrace the future, if you don't embrace AI. If you resist it and reject it, it is going to render you irrelevant. In effect, you will become redundant. But it is a choice. You can choose to be made redundant by AI. That is a fairly glib statement, and it doesn't always apply. And there are some jobs where people's livelihoods really are in peril. But again, it's a case of if you embrace the future and look at how you can leverage this new technology, then it can put you on a different level of whatever work you do. Yeah. The people that I'm almost the sorriest for are photographers. But even there, a creative photographer with creative thinking can use AI not just to take their work to a higher level, but to assist them in making the most of their existing work or the kind of work they already do. And you'd have to delve very, very deeply into a specific skill set or area of expertise to unpack that statement and to, for example, explain exactly what a photographer can do. The point is that it's very individual, and each individual photographer, for example, has a very individual approach to their craft. So what works for one in terms of using tech is not going to work for another. But if you unpack the way you work, the way you think, what you're trying to produce, you can then map that against what AI will help you to do better, for example. So that's a message that runs through the book. AI can help anyone do what they do better rather than replace them at what they do.
I agree. I think that's one word that really popped out over and over was efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. And that now AI has taken all of us a level higher in terms of how much work we can do and how quickly we can do it. For me, writing a web page, for my own website, it's literally become a matter of seconds, as opposed to hours where trawling through just to get the bedrock, the basics of the work done. But what was interesting to me was something I wasn't aware of, and that is that AI hallucinates and is a bit of a liar. It's not, obviously we all know about fact checking, but I didn't realize it could hallucinate. That was new to me.
I find that a fascinating and almost hilarious concept. It would be hilarious if people weren't so obsessed with the idea that AI must do everything for them and that AI is infallible. It's almost as if they're looking for reasons to dismiss AI as an effective tool because it's fallible. But that should be the starting point. The starting point of using any AI tool is whatever it does, I'm going to have to double check what it produces. So you had the scandal recently of Google with Gemini producing images that showed Black people in the American Civil War, for example, as high-ranking soldiers or as German soldiers in the Second World War, which is historically absurd. And that was used to really slam Google for being overly politically correct by being so obsessed with diversity and inclusion that they included it in historically incorrect contexts. It is so that Google bent over backwards to be inclusive and to push diversity, but now they are being hammered for being woke at the expense of reality, for example. But when you look at most of the people who are leveling those criticisms, It's people who are threatened by diversity in the first place. It's people who don't buy into the idea of inclusiveness. So it tends to reflect a conservative mindset on the one hand, or on the other hand, it tends to be media who are looking for a angle or a scandal to generate traffic to their websites or to their articles, or just to create a fuss around AI. AI is a very easy target. And the reaction to those Google images was an absurdly overreaction type of response. But what I want to say also with that, with the mistakes that AI makes, they are all, in fact, teaching moments. They all tell the developers of AI and the users of AI what can go wrong, what should be watched out for, and what should be avoided. So Google should have learned a lot from that. But there have been mistakes over the years, over the past decade, there have been those kind of mistakes that everyone should learn from. And anyone implementing AI should be aware of those kind of mistakes. For example, it was back in 2014 that Amazon discovered that an HR recruitment engine that they were using to identify the best applicants was heavily skewed towards men. And they discovered that was because it was trained on existing CVs of existing staff who were predominantly male. And they very quickly pulled the plug on that. And we're talking about almost a decade ago that there was an awareness of this kind of danger. And a company like that learned immediately from it. And yet 10 years later, the world at large isn't learning from those kind of mistakes. So what hallucinations really teach us is that we have to understand the limitations of AI, but we also have to learn from the mistakes of AI and not repeat those mistakes.
Well, it was also interesting to me that you could, at some point, which they've probably closed these loopholes, ask AI to tell you Microsoft's strategies, and all of that information was also retained in the machine. And big strategic leaks were possible.
That's a great example of what the users of AI should avoid. Don't put confidential information into a publicly accessible AI engine, because it will use that material to train itself. So come on, at least be sensitive to what you yourself are doing with the AI, and then don't blame AI for violating your privacy or giving away your secrets, because that's what it does if you allow it to. So again, this is one of the reasons for my book, is to warn people of the kind of dangers that AI makes possible if they're not alert and if they're not aware of how AI actually works. And getting back to the hallucinations, a point I make frequently in my book is that it is a language model that people are using typically. Here I'm talking about ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot. They're language models. They're not fact models. They're not designed to generate accurate information. They're designed to generate accurate language. And that's their strength, and that's how it should be used. Any fact that is produced by any AI tool has to be double-checked. Any image that is produced has to be double-checked. Does the image actually say what you wanted to say? Or does it actually hide something that's inappropriate, for example? So you ask for, I'll give you a quick example that's real. You ask for an image of technology use in Africa, for example, and one of these image creation tools gives you an image of people in huts cooking mealies while using cell phones. That's taking a stereotype that can be a negative and a damaging stereotype and building it into your imagery, because you think AI knows best and you're not sensitive enough to those kind of issues. You then fall for repeating stereotypes or reinforcing stereotypes, so rather say. And that's just one very basic example. So people just have to be keenly aware of what the limitations of AI are and the need to double check anything they produce.
Well, that sort of brings me to you mentioned the echo chamber that we can start to self-create because of the algorithms on social media. So we end up in this little echo chamber where we only see the same kind of content, confirming our bias over and over and over. But
Exactly.
is it not possible that AI is creating this fake false narrative on a mass scale and pushing us down, pushing the whole of humanity, sort of like a mass Cambridge Analytica social experiment, and we're not aware of it?
That is definitely one of the dangers of AI. And in fact, some researchers have pointed out that there is so much AI-generated content now online that the AI models are being trained on content produced by AI. So it's kind of self-reinforcing stereotypes or misinformation and the like. But again, that's a lesson that should be learned by the AI developers. So when they're using online content to train their models, they need to also teach their models to identify material that's produced by AI and not to use that material in its modeling. So there are solutions, there are ways around all of these. They all have a hack, so to speak. But if you're being stupid about it, then you're going to fall for all of those tricks. And that's something I talk about in the book. This technical concept we call stupidity. If people don't really think through what they're doing or saying.
And I think it all comes down to the AI wrangler, the prompt wrangler at the end of the day. You know, it's our responsibility to use it ethically. That was one thing. I didn't find a chapter on ethics, but I think ethics was woven throughout your book. But there wasn't a specific paragraph or chapter on ethics, on ethics in AI.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's woven through the book. I had in my original plan for the book, I had a chapter on ethics and regulatory issues. The problem with both of those is, firstly, regulatory issues evolve very rapidly. And you can Google AI regulations now, and you'll find half a dozen new sets of regulations that were produced in the last month or so. So putting that into a book doesn't make sense. The ethics, to me, is interwoven with everything you do in AI. So when I started writing a chapter on ethics, I found that it was boring, pedestrian, repetitive, and had already been covered between the lines through the book.
Yeah. But is it, look, I'm not deep. I am a very shallow in the whole history of, I absolutely love ChatGPT and all the generative AIs that we're using. But is that, you know, so I know Sam Altman was removed from OpenAI, and it was because of fear of his ethics and the way that he wanted to push OpenAI. Now I see now he's been reinstated back on the board because everybody revolted, went up in arms, and says, if he leaves, we leave. Do you know much about that? Would you like to comment, or is that not really something you want to comment on?
I do follow those kind of dramas, but I think what happened there was that there was a difference in vision. It wasn't about ethics. And I do think Altman makes the right noises about ethics, and he is concerned about, or seems to be concerned about, what they do being used ethically. It's very ironic that he's being attacked and also sued by Elon Musk, who was one of the founders of OpenAI, because, according to Musk, the original charter of the business was to be a non-profit organization. Well, businesses evolve over time, organizations evolve, and Altman is pushing it in the direction of being a commercial business, which to me does make sense, while keeping much of its output publicly available at no cost. And without it being a business, without it generating profit, it wouldn't be able to keep evolving those publicly accessible free services that are going to bring AI to everybody, as it has. If it hadn't been for that approach, we wouldn't all be benefiting from generative AI to the extent that we already are. So you've got to look at Musk's motives. You've also got to look at his own ethics. And when you follow his behavior on Twitter, you see that ethics and Musk don't go hand in hand.
No.
With Altman, it's far more nuanced, and one could debate it, but you can't claim that he is demonstrably unethical the way one can about Musk.
Yeah, I agree. Which is your favorite generative platform? Because I loved in your book how you actually posed questions to the different platforms, and I loved seeing the comparison in answers. And I was very surprised at how profoundly deep some of the replies were from the different platforms. So which one did you find?
Yeah.
Which do you personally use? Which is your go-to?
My go-to is Google Gemini at the moment. It does change though. If I want a piece of work edited, then I'll put that into ChatGPT, because I find ChatGPT is the best at organizing existing content. Or if I want to summarize, or if I want to find the key points in a long piece of text, I'll use ChatGPT. But if I wanted to generate content for me or answer a question, then I will go to Gemini. But even Gemini gets it wrong. So I asked Gemini, for example, we wanted to run a piece on the Oscar winners on Gadget. I asked Gemini to write an article for me about the 2024 Oscar winners. And it came back and said, sorry, I can't do that for you because the Oscars haven't been awarded yet. Typically, the Oscar night is late February, early March. And this was the day after the Oscars. So I shouted at it. I don't normally shout today. I said, the Oscars were awarded last night. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Immediately apologized and said that its information was out of date. It's really sorry. It realizes that they were awarded. Here's a site where I can go to have a look at the Oscar winners. So scrap that idea of Google Gemini writing an up-to-date article about something that happened yesterday. Now, we normally ask you to write.
Spiders hadn't had enough time to crawl or trawl enough reference material, or?
I think it probably hadn't, its database hadn't been updated, or it wasn't, its default was probably, when asked about a question about something that's happened in the last 24 or 48 hours, its default is probably to see that as not having happened yet. And you have to remind it that it did happen. And I've had that on a few occasions. Fortunately, that's the only kind of article for which we rely on Gemini Pro or any of the others to write it for us, because writing a summary of who won the Oscars is not exactly investigative journalism or creative journalism. What I did end up doing was writing a piece about how science movies have broken through, the first science movie to win an Oscar. And then I did ask Gemini to add some content to that, but I didn't put my byline on the story. So I felt that Gemini had done too much of the work, although I'd rewritten it, but I didn't feel comfortable taking credit for that content. So that's an example of where I will use AI to write something for me. But that's basically to fill a specific news requirement on my website. It's not to take over the creative writing from me. It's to give me time to be able to do creative writing.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed your section about garbage in, garbage out, prompt wrangling. And, I thought it was very practical. I mean, there's a lot out there on prompts and how to do prompting, and the fact that being a prompt engineer is actually a job now. And, for the moment, as I think you pointed out in your book, but it is all about the prompt, the better the prompt, the deeper the prompt, the more specific the prompt, the better the results at the end of the day.
The latest findings are that AI, in fact, is the best tool for creating prompts as well. You can actually ask AI to write a better prompt on the query that you are giving it. And that's another reason why, as I point out in the book, that prompt engineering was a very short-lived, high-end career. Before long, it'll be like saying, I'm good at searching for stuff on Google. That's not a job. And same with prompt engineering. It won't be a job, except in very specific environments like maths or physics, for example, where I think AI will really come into its own if you know what to ask it and you use the right AI tools. So the art of the prompt will still be around, but the job of the prompt won't be around for long.
Yeah. In 2011, I was blessed to I was sent by Google for entrepreneurs to Silicon Valley for a 2-week immersion program. And I was fortunate to meet the founder of Siri. And he shared his original vision of Siri, which is you're sitting in the park and you ask Siri for pizza and it goes and it orders a pizza. It knows your location. It knows your bank account. It pays, and you can say, and book this movie, and it pays everything. It was like a total virtual assistant. But Siri has been such an abysmal failure, and I loved your comment on all of those, which was something like the 20th century is calling and wants them back, because I find Siri to be a massive disappointment. The only thing I can do with Siri is basically tell it to set an alarm for me, because anything I ask it to do, it's just woefully. It never really worked. But even now with ChatGPT, it still doesn't work like what you think. I don't understand. What is your view on that? Why?
I really think that the teams behind those are not being given the resources to develop them further, because the overall organization is working so hard on cutting edge AI tools. They don't want to repurpose something that's ancient and creaking. It's like having to sticky tape a new functionality onto a very old piece of furniture, for example. So that's my personal belief. I don't know what the internal decision making is, but an example of what the way it can evolve is what's happening with Google Assistant, which is Google's version of Siri. And Google Assistant is having various kinds of AI functionality added on and built in. For example, a few years ago, 6 years ago already, Google launched something called Duplex, which was an AI voice-generated calling mechanism for you to make appointments with restaurants, hairdressers, and the like. Those are the examples that they demonstrated back in 2018 and seemed like this is going to be the next big thing. And then everyone discovered that, wait, this is actually a very uncomfortable tool to be subjected to. And businesses that Google expected to sign up to it refused to use it because they found it too creepy, and their customers were going to find it too creepy. So Google eventually canned Duplex as a separate business entity, and they built some of its functionality into Google Assistant, but not the ability to pretend to be you making a call for you or to answer callers. And that's something that I think they'll keep evolving, keep looking for ways to give it more functionality that uses AI without it taking over from humans. And I think that's also an object lesson in trying to make AI take over from humans. Humans are very uncomfortable with AI that pretends to be human.
The uncanny valley.
Exactly that.
Yeah. But speaking of, AI making your life easier, supposed to, we use Google Workspace. So we're a Google powered business with all of our apps and that. And you know what, it drives me crazy. I'm on a Google meeting and I'm saying the words, okay, let me find this document. And then I go to my Google Drive and it's not there. Google hasn't. I know it's listening to my words because it's got all of the chat transcriptions going. We're recording the meeting. Why is the document that I just mentioned, at least the words that I'm speaking out of my mouth, why is it not there when I open it? And I've even gotten so lazy, I don't even want to type anymore. I just want to speak. And then it must just go into the, that's what I do now on my phone, because I hate voice notes. I love sending them, but I hate receiving them. So I just speak out.
So do I.
Yeah.
Just saying, anyone sending me voice notes, I don't like them.
I don't do voice notes. Like, if you actually want me to listen or read, just let me read them, because I can sit in a meeting and scan it. So now I do text to, text generation, voice to text, which is just so amazing. And I've become absolutely so spoiled. I don't even want to type anymore. But when is it going to get to that point? Like, I don't understand why Google doesn't release that kind of assistance. Like I should be able to think, and it just types.
That'll come. The idea of brain to text is actually in the works, and it has been in the works for some years. I used to give a talk called The Shape of the Future. And if I look back at my 2016 presentations, and I look at some of the things that are forecast for the next 10 years, for 2026, one of them was brain to text, which has already been demonstrated by scientists. It's feasible. The problem is that it's very hard to go from something that's 1% accurate or even 10% accurate to something that's accurate enough to be a viable tool. So even for voice to text, for speech recognition, you need something like 99% accuracy. I use a tool called Otter to transcribe my interviews, and I find it has about between 95 and 99% accuracy. If it's an American accent talking clearly, it can be even 100% accuracy, unless they use acronyms or industry jargon. Then it drops back to 99, 98%. But anything below 95% accuracy requires just too much work to correct it. Then you might almost do manual transcription. But when you get past that level, then it's a massive time saver. It's been a boon to my journalistic career because of making me far more eager to do interviews, or willing to do interviews, and not having to transcribe them myself. With brain to text, if you're still at 1% or 10%, where 1 in 10 words that you're thinking might be transcribed to text, that's simply not good enough. It's dazzling and astonishing to see it happening. And it's true science fiction at work. But for it to be viable, for it to be usable, it has to be at a 95% level. And that's why it takes so long. It's just so complex, and it'll be so resource intensive, both financially and computing resources, that for the time being, it's simply not viable. But yes, a generation from now, people will say, remember when you couldn't just think something and to type it out? Must have been so hard to live in those days. Yeah, those days are where we are right now.
That's so true. So you cover in your book, I think, what a lot of the enterprise level CEOs should be doing with AI. What if you're not an enterprise? What if you're a medium-sized company and you don't have all those big budgets or resources? What should a CEO do with AI? What are the first things that they should be adopting?
The fundamental difference between how an enterprise and small business would use AI is that an enterprise should be developing its own AI applications, or should be using enterprise commercial versions of AI tools, and then integrate its own data or its own information into that in what they call an on-premise version of the tool. By on-premise, we mean it's not in the cloud. But then again, it can be in the cloud, and it can be ring-fenced, and it can be protected in terms of any company information being shared outside of the organization. So most of the companies providing those kind of tools now, and I'm thinking Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, Cisco recently released a major platform for that. All of them are looking at how you ring fence your own data and keep it from leaking out or spilling over into the public internet. So that's on the enterprise level. For a small business, you can still get those kind of tools at fairly low cost. You're just not using the Rolls-Royce version, so to speak. And then for a much smaller business, you've got all the free tools available to you, like ChatGPT or Gemini Pro or whatever the case might be. And one example for a very small business that uses Gmail, for example, if Gmail is your platform for email, you can have your own domain. For example, Worldwide Works, we use Gmail, but our email comes from a Worldwide Works address. So you can still be using Gmail without it seeming like you're not a real business. And then one of the things Gmail has built into it that's only recently landed and is part of the Gemini Pro AI platform is a summarizing tool. So on any email you now receive, you'll see a little, it's like a kind of a star. That's the logo of Gemini. And it'll say, summarize this email. And you click on that, and you might get a lengthy email that you have difficulty sifting through or understanding. You just click that button and it summarizes for you. It then also offers to write a response for you. Now, I've tried those attempts at using Gemini or Gmail to write my response, and it never, ever gets the response right in the way that I would respond or the kind of information I would want to share. So that's, I believe, one of the future functionalities that we will see coming more effectively into email, where it's not just looking at the content that's in front of you and in effect in front of the AI, but it actually understands all your content. It understands your previous interactions in that regard, and then comes up with a proposed email that ticks all the boxes. Right now, though, you can still use the summarizing tool to understand what's in someone else's email, or in your own email if you've gone on too long and you're not sure if you've covered all the bases. You ask Gemini to summarize it for you, and you can see whether the key messages are coming through in the summary, for example. And this is one of many, many examples. What I find quite amazing about generative AI is almost anyone I talk to about it who has started using it will give me an example of how they use it very specifically for meeting their needs and how effective it has been. So it's almost like you could do a vox pop. In other words, you ask a selection of ordinary people in the street, how have you used generative AI in a way that's made your life easier? And you'll find that there'll be volumes of great tips and insights into how to make generative AI work for you.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I get asked often by prospective companies that are looking to work with me. They'll say, "Are you using AI?" And my answer is always, "We've been using AI and machine learning for as long as we've been using Google and Facebook." Because it's always been there. There's always been AI. And I think everyone's on this bandwagon of how are you using AI? And I got an RFQ the other day, and literally someone had put AI in every single bullet point, even where it didn't make any sense, because they wanted to have this cutting edge reply where some of it's a little bit of emperor's new clothes. Like, yes, we use many tools that use AI. In fact, most of our tools, and if you're in a marketing space, you're using marketing technology all of the time. If you're not using, big data, or if you're just in the sort of mid-level of the marketing technology pyramid, I think you're already using AI. And, if you're using ChatGPT, there's definitely ways that you can, look at automating making repetitive tasks redundant or automating those tasks. I think that was one of the things that stood out to me in your book a lot is, what can you automate? What repetitive tasks that are human driven can you automate but still have it checked by AI? Because I think you use a lot of examples of where it's not foolproof and it has to be checked.
And No, exactly that. But a point you make of people adding AI onto everything, it's actually very amusing when I see companies issuing announcements of a new product, and it's just an old product with AI added on to it. But what's often happening is that it is accurate. It is an AI powered product in many of these cases, and it has been all along. It's just that they never made a point of it, and then they never publicized it because it made it seem too complicated. So when no one knew what AI was, what it even stood for, companies were very reluctant to say that this is an AI powered tool in case it scared people off, or they felt that it was something that they wouldn't understand. Now, because everyone understands what AI is, suddenly anyone who has any smidgen of AI in their tool or in their process is going to make a big deal of it. And that's why so many organizations, so many products are suddenly AI companies or products. It's not because they are so innovative and cutting edge. It's because it's what they've been doing all along. Because as I say in the book, AI has been building up for a long time, and it's been in use in the business world for a long time.
Agreed. But I do love it, and it is something definitely has shifted. And I think, it's almost like life before the fax machine, and life after, and life before the smartphone, and life, or even the mobile phone, and then the smartphone, and everything has just become faster, more. And so we're creating these tools to make our lives easier, but the tools are enslaving us. And, we always keep saying, this will make my life easier. The phone will make my life easier, but it ends up that actually we're working harder than we ever were. And I do think that AI is going to be exactly the same thing, like right now, we think, it makes our lives easier, but actually our workload just doubles exponentially. Or what do you think about that?
Yes and no. What it's also doing is it's opening up a lot of opportunities for being productive in new spaces. And many of us have the mindset that we don't want to forego any of those opportunities. We want to just do everything that's possible. And it's not possible for us to do everything that's possible in the time that's available to us. So we find ourselves spending far more time than we should working. And I know I'm guilty of that, because I keep thinking, wow, look what else I can do. And that's part of the problem. Another problem is, though, in a lot of organizations that are embracing AI, they're embracing it in a way to squeeze more out of their employees. And that's just wrong. If the employees can be more productive and more efficient, they should also be rewarded for that efficiency with a little more time off.
Yeah. That is actually, but when you're a bit of a workaholic, there's no such thing as time off because you fill the space. But yeah, I agree with you. If AI gives us wins, we should, take some time to rest on the AI laurels, as it were. So thank you, Arthur. That's been amazing. I think the last question I have for you is, what's the next book in the works of you, or are you taking a bit of a break after this book, or where to from here for you?
Dylan, my last book was Tech Savvy Parenting back in 2014, 2015. So this one's been a long time coming. And I had been puzzling for a while what my next book would be. And I have been dabbling with a few, but none of them were such naturals as this book. And producing this book was sheer joy for me. I really did enjoy it almost more than any other book I've written, because it came so easily and so naturally. And I already had so much of the material from the writing I've been doing about AI for the past decade. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. And when the book came out, I was so delighted with the book that more than any of my other books, I felt this was like a new baby being born, a new child that I'm raising. And that's how I still feel about it. So I'm not thinking about, now I must prepare the next child, because that would be so disrespectful to this one, and so almost disregarding of how important it is. So this book is incredibly important in my life. It's almost given me a new lease on life in terms of writing about technology, because it's not that I would have stopped writing about technology, or that I'm bored or jaded. I'm never jaded about where technology is going, but it's excited me that I was able to encapsulate a revolution as it was breaking out into the open. And I want to keep enjoying riding that wave for the time being, because I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. And I don't want to curtail that enjoyment by thinking of what's my next project that's not an AI book. But if you want to know what technologies are coming next, I would say that the next huge thing beyond AI is going to be quantum computing. And the question I ask almost every one of the international tech CEOs that I interview is, what happens when quantum meets AI? And most of them can't answer that question yet, because like with AI, we couldn't imagine its possibilities when it was still building up. Same with quantum computing. That's going to be the next generation of computing that makes our current computers look like really something from the steam age. And that's the contrast between our computers now and the quantum computers to come. So imagine you've got quantum computing meets AI, the dazzling possibilities that opens up for the entire world. So that's the topic that you could say is my next big topic. But I don't, at this stage, plan any new books for now. And I emphasize for now, because you never know what happens next.
Well, thank you so much, Arthur. I could feel the joy in the book when I read it, because it read so easily, and it was so entertaining and informative, and yet so simple. But I know that it's actually a sign of great intelligence to take a highly complex topic and make it feel simple. And also, I think a huge amount of hard work. I often say, to my clients, it takes a lot of hard work to make something simple. A lot of hard work and intelligence, and it's actually very easy to create complexity.
Thank you, Dinah.
It's not easy to create simplicity. So I really appreciate the book, and I do encourage everyone who is listening to go out and buy it. Thank you, Arthur, so much for your time. You are a national treasure, and you must look after yourself, and I'm looking forward to the next things.
Thanks very much.